He gave a freezing kid his jacket before school. By noon, he was fired. A week later, a billionaire showed up at his door with an offer that changed everything. December in Ohio hits different. It's the kind that doesn't just sting. It gets personal. Wind that cuts sideways through your ribs like it's got a grudge, and air so cold it makes your teeth second-guess the contract with your gums. Name's Carl Taylor. I'm 59, janitor at East Ridge High, and I show up 2 hours early every day. Not for overtime, I don't get any. I do it because a clean school ain't about polish. It's about pride, and I still believe in pride, even if the district stopped believing in people like me a long time ago. That morning, I was buffing the tile near the back hallway, the kind of shine that makes kids slip if they're showing off. Then I heard it, a cough. Real light, but sharp. The kind of cough you don't fake. I turned toward the side door, and there he was, curled up on the concrete like an abandoned notebook. Mikey Ross, 15. Skinny as a rake, shoes talking at the soles, jacket so thin it might as well have been a suggestion. He was one of the quiet ones, got sent to the principal twice for attitude, which in school speak means didn't smile enough for adults. His mom lost her job last month, custodial staff at the hospital, go figure, and his dad? Vanished when Mikey was 6. Probably somewhere warmer now. Ain't that always the way? I didn't say a word, just walked up, unzipped my heavy-duty work coat, industrial grade, lined, the kind that could fight a wind tunnel, and dropped it over his shoulders. He looked up at me like I'd just handed him a brick of gold, like he didn't know if he should say thank you or run. That kind of stare tells you more than any file in the office ever will. "Keep it," I said, nodding toward his shivering hands. "You freeze out here. They'll find you next spring under the trash bins. Ain't nobody got time for that kind of paperwork." He didn't smile, just blinked, like maybe he was trying to remember the last time someone did something for him without strings attached. I gave him a small grin and tapped my mop handle twice on the floor, our unofficial goodbye. Now, here's the part where you think the story turns into a nice Christmas card ending. Some warm-hearted principal sees me from the office window, tears up, gives me a bonus. Right? Not even close. Because by lunchtime, I wasn't polishing floors, I was packing my things, but we'll get to that in a second. What happened next flipped my whole damn world upside down. You're not going to want to miss how fast they came for me and how I hit back. They called me in right after lunch. Now, I've been around long enough to know, when the call comes mid-shift and they say, "Can you come to the office for a moment?" It ain't ever about cake or compliments. So I wiped my hands on my work pants, rolled my shoulders back, and walked down that freshly waxed hallway like a man walking into a courtroom where the verdict's already printed. Principal Lauren Breen was sitting behind her desk, perfect posture, hair like it hadn't moved since 2004. She always had this tightness about her, like someone constantly bracing for a lawsuit. Across from her sat an empty chair. I didn't take it. Mr. Taylor," she began, folding her hands neatly on the desk like a sermon was coming. "Please know that this is not personal." Well, that's how you know it absolutely is. She took a breath, dramatic, practiced, and continued. "We received a report this morning. Apparently you provided a student with a school-issued garment, specifically your work uniform jacket." I stared at her. "That boy was freezing," I said, "sitting on concrete in a wind that could peel paint. He didn't ask for it. I gave it to him." Lauren nodded slowly. "I understand your perspective, but unfortunately, providing personal or uniform-related clothing to a minor, especially without parental permission, falls outside of acceptable conduct. It can be perceived as a breach of safety protocols and professional boundaries." Professional boundaries. She said it like I'd handed the kid a bottle of moonshine and a loaded slingshot, like I wasn't the same man who scrubbed puke off gym floors and unclogged toilets during snowstorms because the maintenance team was understaffed. I clenched my jaw. "So let me get this straight. The kid's out there shaking like a leaf, and the mistake was, what? That I gave him warmth instead of a written permission slip?" Her mouth tightened. "I'm not here to debate ethics, Mr. Taylor." "No," I said, still standing. "You're here to make sure the district doesn't get any bad PR if something gets taken out of context." There was a pause, and in that pause, I saw it. The real truth. The wheels had been turning before that jacket ever hit Mikey's shoulders. This was just the excuse. She slid a file across the desk, not even thick, just one page clipped inside. Termination of contract. Immediate. No severance, no appeal. Just a signature line and a reminder to return my keys by end of day. Effective today, she said with a voice that could have sold me a printer I didn't need. We wish you the best in your future endeavors. That's the part that stung the most. Not the firing, not the paperwork, but the way she said it, like we were parting ways after a polite brunch. Not erasing 19 years of quiet loyalty with one pen stroke. No handshake, no thank you. No mention of the 6 a.m. snow shoveling, the broken boiler repairs on Christmas Eve, or the times I stayed late helping the science teacher clean up after her annual volcano experiment exploded over 3 classrooms. None of it mattered. One jacket. That's all it took to make me a problem. I signed nothing, took the paper, folded it once, slowly, like I was pressing a flag at a soldier's funeral. Then I turned and walked out, leaving her office colder than the wind outside. And just like that, I was gone. No farewell, no closure, no box of donuts from the break room. Just a man with a stiff back, a silent phone, and a heart that suddenly weighed twice as much. But I'll tell you something else. As I stepped back into the hallway, something in me clicked, not snapped, no. This wasn't rage, this was calculation. A quiet storm settling behind the ribs, the kind that doesn't yell, doesn't threaten, it waits, it watches. Because I knew right then, that building didn't run on policies and protocols. It ran on people who gave a damn, and they just fired the last one who did. My house isn't much to look at. One floor, paint peeling like sunburnt skin, and a front porch that creaks louder than the evening news. The old rocking chair out front, got it on clearance from a closing hardware store, the kind that sells bug spray, fishing lures, and dusty lawn chairs, all in one aisle. That's where I sat that evening, with a folded letter in my hand and a silence so thick it made the wind seem polite. I wasn't shivering, not from the cold anyway. My hands shook because of something deeper. That slow-burning kind of ache that doesn't come from your bones, but from the place in your chest where dignity used to sit. It wasn't anger at the principal. Not really. Lauren Breen was just a cog, a mouthpiece with a title and a smile built for insurance disclaimers. No, I was mad at the whole machine. The kind of system where helping a kid is a liability, not a virtue. Where policies mattered more than people. Where decency could get you fired faster than showing up late every Monday for a year. That letter in my hand? It didn't just tell me I was out of a job. It told me I was disposable, replaceable. Like the janitor's job was to be invisible, and I'd broken the rule by being seen. I sat on that porch for hours. Long after the sun dipped behind the tree line. Long after my neighbor's porch light blinked out across the street. And then something happened. I didn't hear it, didn't see it. But somewhere out there, a spark lit, and it came from the last person anyone expected. Mikey Ross, that quiet kid, the one who never raised his hand in class and walked with his hood up even when it wasn't raining, the one with more absences than friends. Apparently, he'd posted something online that night, didn't tag me, didn't mention the school, just said what he felt. Today, a man I barely knew gave me the jacket off his back because I was cold. He got fired for it. If this is what justice looks like, I want nothing to do with it. That was it. One picture of my jacket hanging off his bony shoulders. One caption. By midnight, it had over 187,000 likes. People shared it, commented on it, tagged news stations, wrote things like, "This man should be celebrated, not punished," and "Where's the school board's humanity?" I didn't even know about it until the next morning. But that night, while I sat alone in that old chair, rocking back and forth with a letter that weighed more than it looked, the world had started shifting, and I didn't even know it yet. It was a little after 10 p.m. when I heard the knock. 3 solid thuds, not rushed, not nervous. The kind of knock that says I know exactly why I'm here. I wasn't expecting company. Most folks in this part of town were in bed by 9, curled up with their electric blankets and nightly news reruns. I stood up slow from my old recliner, my back stiff from a day spent doing nothing but thinking too much. When I opened the door, there was a man standing on my porch. Tall, sharp suit under a dark wool coat, polished shoes that didn't belong anywhere near my cracked concrete steps. Behind him, two more men, silent, tense, the kind of people who looked like they had earpieces even when they didn't. The man in front stepped forward. "Mr. Carl Taylor?" he asked, voice calm but with weight behind it. "That's me," I said cautiously. He extended a hand. "My name is James Hartman. I run a group of companies, mostly tech, mostly boring stuff. You probably don't know me, but I know you." I hesitated for half a second before shaking his hand. It was warm, firm, not the kind of grip you forget. "I wanted to stop by tonight," he continued, "because I saw what you did, and more importantly, I saw what happened after you did it." I didn't say anything, just gave him that look you give someone when you're waiting for the punchline or the fine print. But there wasn't any. "You reminded the world that decency doesn't need a policy manual," he said. "You didn't save a company. You didn't write a check. You gave a kid your jacket." And somehow, that shook people deeper than any viral trend I've seen in a decade. He reached into his coat and pulled out an envelope, not a letter, an offer. "I run a foundation," he said. "We work with schools across the country, real support, not the kind that disappears after a news cycle. I want you to join us as a community program director." I blinked. "Me?" I asked. "I'm a janitor." "You were a janitor," he said with a grin. "But what you are is the kind of person I want shaping what real support looks like. You'll help us design programs that put people before paperwork. You'll visit schools, mentor staff, and yes," he smiled, "you can hand out as many jackets as you like." I just stood there, letter of termination still sitting on the table behind me, and now, here I was, staring at a job offer from a billionaire who had knocked on my door. It didn't feel real. "You don't have to decide tonight," he added, sensing the look on my face, "but I hope you do. We need people like you." And just like that, he turned, nodded once, and walked back toward the street. His driver opened the door. The three of them disappeared into the night, leaving behind nothing but tire tracks and a stunned old man on a porch that hadn't seen a moment like that in 59 years. I stepped back inside, shut the door gently, and sat down in that same creaky chair. Except this time, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel broken. I felt seen. By the end of that week, I wasn't just that janitor who gave a kid his jacket. I had a name, and for once, people actually knew it. Carl Taylor. It was on the ticker at the bottom of national news broadcasts. It was on morning talk shows. It even made it into a Sunday op-ed titled, "The Man Who Cleaned Floors and Cleaned Up Our Conscience." Every channel ran the same footage. Me standing on my rickety porch in a borrowed blazer 2 sizes too big, shaking hands with James Hartman like I'd just been drafted into the big leagues. They clipped the moment he offered me the job, zoomed in on the part where I said I wasn't a hero, just a man who didn't want a kid to freeze on school property. And then came the part no one expected. Principal Lauren Breen, she tried to get ahead of it, issued a statement saying she was deeply saddened by the misinterpretation of school safety protocols and grateful for Mr. Taylor's years of service. But it was too late. The emails came in like a tidal wave. Parents, teachers, alumni, community leaders, even a few former students. They didn't just write the school board, they flooded it, demanding answers, demanding accountability, demanding change, and change came fast. By the following Monday, Lauren was no longer employed by the district. Turns out, firing the janitor for kindness isn't great for public relations. As for me, I didn't just take the new job, I dove into it like I'd been waiting my whole life to matter this way. The Hartman Foundation put me behind the wheel of a Chevy Suburban and gave me a mission. Visit schools, listen to people, and figure out where the cracks are before kids fall through them. So I did. One cafeteria at a time, one crowded hallway after another. Not as some guest speaker with a fancy PowerPoint, but as someone who knew the smell of floor wax at 5 a.m. and the sound of a kid crying in a bathroom stall when no one was supposed to be listening. I met with teachers exhausted from juggling overcrowded classrooms and underfunded supplies. I sat with janitors who hadn't had a raise in 7 years. I hugged single moms who cried when we delivered winter coats to the front office because they'd been wrapping their kids in old beach towels to wait for the bus. And everywhere I went, I told one story, not about me, about Mikey Ross. Mikey, the kid nobody saw until the day I saw him shivering. He came with me now, my first volunteer. He stood beside me at school assemblies, shy at first, but growing more confident with every stop. He handed out jackets like they were gold bars, helped pack meal kits, told his story, not like a victim, but like someone who finally had a place in the world. We weren't fixing everything, not even close, but we were showing up. And sometimes that's where real change begins. No, I didn't become someone else. I didn't reinvent myself. I just became heard. And in this country, sometimes that's the biggest victory of all. The first press conference of the Hartman Foundation's new national initiative was held in early spring. The kind of crisp, hopeful morning where the air feels like it's shaking off winter's last breath. There were banners on the wall behind me that said things like, "Every child deserves warmth and dignity isn't optional," polished slogans, professional design. But honestly, none of that mattered. Because when I stepped up to the podium that day, the only thing I could feel was the silence in the room. The kind of silence where people want to listen. Not because you're famous, not because you've rehearsed a speech, but because they care what you're about to say. And one reporter, a young guy, maybe fresh out of journalism school, raised his hand. Jane asked the question they all really came for. "Mr. Taylor, why'd you do it? Why risk your job, your livelihood, just to help one kid?" I didn't rush my answer. I let the weight of it sit for a second. Then I looked out at the room, packed with cameras, reporters, school leaders, parents, and kids, and I said the only thing that felt honest. Because when you see a child shivering in front of you, you've got exactly two choices. You can walk by, tell yourself it's not your problem, let the cold or the world eat him alive, or you can stop. You can do what your heart tells you. And that day, my heart told me to give that boy my jacket. That's it. No big speech, no hidden agenda, just a moment of decency. I paused. Then I added, and if I had to do it all over again, even knowing I'd lose my job, even knowing what it would cost, I'd make the same choice, twice, with both hands. There was a beat of silence. Then the room exploded. Applause, loud, long, real, not polite clapping, not media pageantry, but people standing up because something in them cracked open when they heard the truth, spoken plain. That's the thing about decency. It doesn't need a spotlight. It just needs a spine. And in that moment, something shifted, not just in the room, but across the country. Thousands of people watched that clip later, on TV, on their phones, in classrooms, in union halls, in church basements. It lit a fire, not because the story was dramatic, but because it was human. Folks said I was brave, but I'm not. I'm just a guy who used to mop hallways and took a chance on kindness. Turns out, kindness has a louder voice than I ever imagined. No, I didn't save the world. But maybe, just maybe, I reminded it what it could be. And if that's all I ever do, then it was worth every step of the storm that got me here.